Hey, friends, welcome back to the hottest show on YouTube in the last 15 minutes at least. This is the Have I Told You About This Show? My name is Brad Comgenic, and I am about to tell you where my mind took me over the past week. This week, I've had a cold, so I spent a lot of time at home, and actually, my mind first took me to reminding me about this really cool feature that I have in my multi-system emulator that I have called, and it's called this little feature is called the randomizer. And all you do is basically hold in one of your buttons on your gamepad, and it will just randomly pick a game for you to play. Now, normally that wouldn't be a problem, but the problem is I have over 140,000 games in this system for it to choose from. Now, supposedly there's some programming in here where it kind of learns what your favorites are, and you can mark some games as favorites. So it'll tend to choose more from your favorites than other places. So this week, um, well, actually, in past weeks, what it's done is it's picked like Japanese games, like Japanese arcade games, and you can still play them and everything, but you just can't read them because I don't read Japanese. I don't speak it or read it. But this week, I hit the jackpot, and it chose for me two random games that I absolutely love to play. One is Rampage World Tour. And the second is Gauntlet Legends. So today I'm going to be talking to you about those games. And of course, I'll show you what the games look like. And then I'm going to do, as I always do, a very huge deep dive into the game, share some memories of the game, tips, tricks, who created it, all the good stuff that you would ever want to know about the game to get you interested and hopefully wanting to play it yourself. Both of them. Then I have this really cool app on my my Kindle Fire tablet, and it's the Marvel Universe. And I can go back and read comics since the beginning of comics. And I actually did that. I've done that since Christmas, and I went back on the Amazing Spider-Man from number 1, and then it leads you down rabbit holes, right? Because once you get so far, there's little reminders in the comics that say, "Oh, you missed out on something that happened in Spectacular Spider-Man," and that's like, "Oh, okay. Now I need to go over and read Spectacular Spider-Man and get caught up to this," and then, "Oh, this is in Web of Spider-Man," so then you have to go to Web of Spider-Man, or this happened over in Punisher, and then you go read Punisher and that particular issue so you can keep caught up. But I remembered, thanks to my mind and reminding me to go back and read some of these comics, of basically my all-time favorite, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Spider-Man villain who's so underused. His name, the Hobgoblin. And I'm going to give you the entire rundown on him as the final segment of today's show. When he first appeared, who all's been in the costume, what his origin story is, even his transformation in the comics that he's made, and why I and many others believe the Hobgoblin is not only the greatest Marvel villain of all time, but he's probably the greatest villain of all time. So, sit back, relax, and I want you to enjoy this trip with me through my mind as we go through Gauntlet Legends, one of the greatest arcade games of all time, Rampage, another just amazing a sequel, World Tour 2, the original Rampage, and then the mighty, ominous Hobgoblin. And before we start, thank you again to everyone who has liked and subscribed to the show to date. I just have such a blast creating this content for you each and every week. And I hope you're enjoying it as much as I do. I know some videos have gotten all the way up to 22 views. That's huge for me. So I just want to tell everyone, thank you. It seems like you all enjoy Survivor as much as I do, because anytime I say the word Survivor, the views go up. So you can look forward to, once the new season 50 hits, every week there will be a segment here on the show covering Survivor. I was thinking about doing just a Survivor only podcast, but I'm not. I'm just not. I'll just cover it here week by week, and that'll be good. There's a lot to cover in Survivor, but I've also found over the past week, since I was sick and I went back and listened to some great podcasts, that there's many people already covering it and probably doing a much better job than Buff Daddy here could do with it. So hopefully you'll just enjoy my little segments as I try to cover it here each week. So without any further ado, let's jump head first into the games. You know, the late 1990s marked a transitional era for arcade and even home gaming, with developers revisiting and revitalizing classic franchises for a whole new generation. And among the most memorable of those were the two games I'll be reviewing today: Rampage World Tour, a sequel to the original Rampage, and Gauntlet Legends, a sequel to the original Gauntlet and Gauntlet 2. Two games that, while rooted in the golden age of arcades, they found new life through updated 3D graphics, expanded gameplay, and multiple platform releases. So, with that said, let's jump on over here and let's start with Rampage. Rampage World Tour. Okay, so the developer and publisher details are as such. Rampage World Tour was developed by Game Refuge Incorporated, an independent studio that was founded by Brian Colin and Jeff Newman. These guys were the original creators of the very first Rampage arcade game. This game was published by Midway Games for arcades in North America, and GT Interactive handling European distribution for home console ports. Now, notably, the home versions were developed by different studios. For example, the PlayStation port was by Midway Studios San Diego. There was a Saturn and a Windows port done by a company called Point of View. And the highly sought after Nintendo 64 version was done by a company called Sapphire. And there was even a Game Boy Color version by Digital Eclipse. So Brian Colin and Jeff Nauman's involvement was absolutely pivotal to this game, because it was their unique tongue-in-cheek approach to game design that shaped this entire series' identity. The company Game Refuge was specifically approached by Midway to create a brand new arcade product with broader appeal than the prevalent fighting and racing games of the era. You see, Street Fighter and Daytona sometimes were the only two games you would find in arcades, in some of the arcades that I would go into. Multiple Street Fighters, multiple Daytonas, all the Daytonas hooked together so you could race each other. And then there would be a smattering of other arcade games here and there. It was kind of tough to break into the arcade scene at that time, but Midway managed to do it. So Rampage World Tour debuted in arcades in March of 1997. Its popularity led to a series of home console ports over the next 2 years. For example, the PlayStation version hit North America on October 21st, 1997. The Sega Saturn version in North America on November 26th of that same year, 1997. Now, the Nintendo 64 version hit in March 30th of 1998, and for many stands to be the home version to have. Now, as I mentioned, there was a Game Boy Color version in North America in December of 1998, along with a Windows PC release that same month, December 1998. Now, the game was later included also in compilations, such as Midway Arcade Treasures 2. And by the way, many don't know this, it's included as a bonus in Rampage Total Destruction. And I believe that was a PlayStation 2 uh, game. But you can find this entire game hidden in Rampage Total Destruction. I won't tell you how to find it here. I'll let you look that up on your own. As far as the genre and gameplay styles, Rampage World Tour is kind of best described as an action arcade game with a focus on destruction based gameplay. So, you as the player control one of three kaiju giant monsters. You had George the gorilla, not King Kong, George the gorilla, Lizzie the lizard, or Ralph, the giant werewolf. And as they travel the globe, they demolish cities and they battle military forces. And the core objective is simple yet satisfying: destroy every building in every city while surviving attacks from tanks, helicopters, and other hazards. The game supports up to three players simultaneously. In the arcade and the Nintendo 64 versions, uh, the 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 game supports up to three players simultaneously in the arcade and the Nintendo 64 version, I should have said. And the PlayStation and Saturn ports were limited to players each. Now, the gameplay loop is intentionally repetitive, and it echoes the arcade philosophy: easy to learn, hard to master. Keeps you putting quarters in, right? But the home versions, no quarters were needed. And it's punctuated by humorous animations and power ups and environmental variety. So, what about sequels, statuses, and series context? Well, Rampage World Tour is a direct sequel to the original Rampage game, and itself is a landmark in arcade history, for sure. The series continued with several follow ups. You had Rampage 2 Universal Tour in 1999, Rampage Through Time in 2000, and Rampage Total Destruction in 2006. The World Tour is often regarded as the last entry to fully capture the spirit of the original Rampage game, because the subsequent games introduced kind of new monsters and some new mechanics, but it really struggled to recapture the same level of critical or commercial success. So, the creation of Rampage World Tour is a testament to the enduring vision of its designers. As I mentioned, Brian Colin and Jeff Nauman, having left Midway to form Game Refuge, were approached by Midway in kind of the mid 1990s to revisit this classic property. And the goal was to create a game with broader appeal than any of the other just regular old fighting and racing titles that dominated the arcades of the day. Colin and Nauman's design philosophy emphasized player empowerment and humor. They wanted a game where there was just no wrong way to play it, a sandbox of destruction that encouraged experimentation and laughter. The team relished the opportunity to expand the game's world, introducing a globe-trotting narrative and a satirical look of corporate malfeasance through the fictional Scum Labs Corporation. It was Scum Labs experimentation, you'd say, that created the three kaiju. There you see Scum Labs. And the home ports were developed by different teams, though, and that led to subtle differences in features and performance. For example, that Nintendo 64 version actually retained three-player support, but the PlayStation and Saturn versions didn't, despite initial plans to include it. Now, this game is absolutely thick with tips, tricks, secrets, and Easter eggs. They There's more than I have time to mention here, but let's go through some. First off, you can play as V period, E period, R period, N period, Vern, the character. If you manage to eat a toxic waste barrel outside of the Scum Labs facility, you can see it on the ground. There are a few of them on the ground, and one is broken and busted. And if your character scoops it up and eats it, you transform into the purple vampire bat Vern, and it grants you flight, fireballs, and super strength for the entire rest of that stage. I always look for that purple toxic waste because I love to play Vern. Just it's almost like God mode. You just smack the buildings and they fall. You can smack the air planes jets out of the air. He's wonderful to find and play. There are hidden cities in this game. If you rapidly press specific buttons on the city screens, like the one you see here, players can warp to secret stages such as Atlanta, Casablanca, Fairbanks, and the Underworld, as well as many others. You can also change your character's color. At the character select screen, if you press up or down, that changes the color palette for George, Lizzie, and Ralph. You can get double points. If you press your character's button on the city introduction screen, in certain cities, it'll double the points that you earn. Also, once you've knocked your character has hit the building and the windows open up, if you happen to see a calculator, hit it again and grab it. And in any city, they appear in every city, and that will once again double the points. Did you know you can ride the tanks and the airplanes? If you jump on tanks or low flying planes, your character will be allowed to control them briefly, and you can use them to attack buildings or even other players before being launched into the air. There's a level select. If you hold on the Nintendo 64, if you hold L down, and then if you hit all four of the C buttons at the character select screen, that enables a level select mode. There's a mode called Iron Stomach. After you return to a U.S. city after beating World Tour mode, if you hold down and press your character's action button 3 times, it makes all food digestible. So the things that you would normally eat, like the toxic waste or anything else that's on the screen that causes you, like medicines and things that causes your character to vomit, instead that'll turn those into health restoring items. But you have to beat the game first. There are secret warps and level skips as well. Specific button combinations at certain city screens allow players to skip ahead several days or even access unique bonus stages. And finally, beware of the rubber duckies. Eating a rubber ducky item calls in fighter planes early and increases the challenge of the level. Never eat a rubber ducky. Okay, how was this game accepted by critics? Well, Rampage World Tour received mixed reviews upon its release, and opinions varied wildly across platforms and regions. For example, in the arcade, the original score by Game Rankings was only a 57%. Now, the Nintendo 64 game originally by Game Rankings only got a 59%. PlayStation 57%, Saturn 69%. But the arcades was nearly a 99% user review. So it tells you people that were playing the games love the games. People that were reviewing them felt they were kind of bland. Although that N64 version, IGN gave a a 8.9 out of 10. That tells you that N64 version is probably the best version you can play of the game. Critics praised the game's faithful recreation of the arcade experience and its humor, as well as multiplayer mayhem. You know, as playing multiplayers, you can hit each other and take each other's health down. I don't know why you would want to do that. It just takes away from the fun of the game and the length you can play. But I always played with people who did it. So there you go. Many did note that the gameplay was repetitive, with little variety in level design or objectives. Now, I'm going to say this. Yeah, it seems to be the same levels over and over again, but look, here's a moon level that you're watching right here. They're on the moon. There's also levels where you're in a city with water, and there's water right in the middle of and your character can literally drown if you stay in the water too long. So there was a lot of um, difference in the levels, but it took you a long time to keep playing. You were getting into like level 60 and 70 before you started to see some of the difference in the architecture and the different levels. Um, as far as commercial performance goes, there are no precise sales figures available, but Rampage World Tour did perform respectably in arcades, and it sold hundreds of thousands of units as well on home consoles, particularly that Nintendo 64 and PlayStation. The game was a bestseller. Here's what makes the game fun and cool to play, in my opinion. Its enduring fun lies just in its pure, unadulterated chaos. The thrill of controlling this giant monster, smashing skyscrapers and eating the civilians and battling military hardware taps into a primal sense of empowerment and mischief. It's why today we still watch Godzilla and King Kong or Godzilla versus King Kong movies. The game's humorous animations, such as monsters that throw up after eating something bad, or how they react comically to damage, like if they burn their feet, they'll hop around on one foot for a while. Um, it's it's really impressive the amount of animations that this game has, and again, multiplayer is where it truly shines because you can get way farther in a multiplayer game, particularly the arcade version, than you can by yourself. And the game's global tour structure with cities modeled after real world locations and landmarks, like there's Big Ben in London. If you look at the buildings, you'll see the difference. Um, so it takes someone to be able to get to those levels to have an appreciation of what's there. It just provides a sense of progression and variety, even if the core gameplay remains consistent. Of course, the inclusion of power-ups like Vern and the ability to ride tanks and things, and all of the hundreds of surprises and Easter eggs make this game a spectacle. It's truly a hidden gem today. For many players, the game evokes memories of the arcades and couch co-op sessions, and few games offer the same blend of destruction, humor, and multiplayer mayhem where there's really no wrong way to play. You play it the way you want to. It's very accessible, yet it's deep, and it's very easy to pick up. The game's secrets and power ups are always going to be there for you to find. Um, if you don't want to go out and look at a guide, that is. And again, that Nintendo 64 version in particular is cited as an underrated multiplayer experience, overshadowed by more prominent titles, but beloved by those who actually uh, bothered to play the game to discover them. I can remember one time my friends and I were playing, and we were playing the Nintendo 64 version of Rampage World Tour. And, we just had a bunch of pizza, and we just decided we're going to play this game for as long as we can. We had spent hours and hours and hours smashing cities and laughing at the absurdity of George's burps and Lizzie's gleeful destruction. Also, Lizzie the lizard is a girl, and when you are a monster and you get killed, you go back to your human form, and she's naked, but she covers up everything. The what do we call them? The fertile bits, if you will. But then something changed as we entered Fairbanks, Alaska. That was a level we'd played countless times. I remembered reading in one of the game magazines that there was a secret there that would take you to an underworld stage. Well, my heart raced as I remembered. I was frantically trying to remember how to do that, and then it just hit me when the city name appeared. If you pressed your character's action button 3 times, that would have been jump for George and punch for Lizzie and kick for Ralph. And if you did that, and everybody did it in unison at the same time, you could get to this underworld stage. So we tried it, and suddenly the screen flickered, and we were transported to what looked like hell. It was a hellish landscape, unlike anything we'd seen before. Demons were dancing in the background, and the familiar cityscapes was replaced with twisted architecture and eerie red lighting. We screamed in delight, and we were barely able to contain our laughter as we battled through the underworld, discovering new enemies and power ups. This game is just fertile and ripe with things like that to find. That moment, stumbling upon that hidden world uh, through a secret in a video game magazine, it captures the magic of Rampage World Tour. It's not just about destruction. It was about discovery and camaraderie and the thrill of the unknown. Even now, years later, the memory of that secret stage still brings a smile to my face. It's a testament to the game's enduring power to surprise and delight. I hope you will take a chance to play Gauntlet World Tour, and I hope you've liked the videos that we've had on screen for you, showing you the gameplay. All right. Let me know down in the comments what you think of Rampage World Tour. Have you played it? Did you play it in one of the arcade compilations? Did you know about any of the secrets that I told you about today? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to talk to you about um, Rampage World Tour. All right. Now we're going to move on to the next game, Gauntlet Legends. So Gauntlet Legends was developed by Atari Games, later Midway Games West, and was published by Atari Games for arcades. Midway handled the home console releases. The game's production was led by Mike Hawley, with Steve Caterson as art director, and John Paul and Barry Leitch composing the soundtrack. The development team was substantial, and it reflected the game's ambitious scope. The arcade version's credits lists over 80 contributors, including programmers, artists, animators, and voice talent. Gauntlet Legends was first released in arcades in October of 1998, and its success led to a series of home console ports. First off, the Nintendo 64 port hit North America on September 1999, the PlayStation North America in 2000, and the Dreamcast also version in 2000. Each port was developed specifically for its platform, and each had unique features and content tailored to the hardware's strengths and limitations. Now, Gauntlet Legends, if you remember the old Gauntlet game, you were a top down on top of your character, and you were a warrior or a Valkyrie or an archer or a mage. And basically, you were going through mazes, and that was pretty much it. But it was the first four-player game in the arcades, if I remember correctly, and it was truly a quarter muncher. This was the first game that really outraged arcade players of the day, because you could literally do nothing, just stand there, and you would start losing health. You were not going to play this game forever. It wanted your quarters to keep playing. And that's why emulation is such a wonderful thing today. You can actually finish the game. You just keep hitting the quarter button. But it is a hack. This new version is not top down. It's actually a little to the side. Don't want to call it isometric, but it's close to that. But it's hack and slash dungeon crawling action game with strong RPG elements, actually, for an arcade game. It's the first entry in the Gauntlet series to use 3D graphics, and it moved away from that top-down 2D perspective. The game supports up to 4 players again, well, except on PlayStation, where it's limited to 2. And it emphasizes cooperative play as players battle through hordes of enemies, collect treasure, and even level up your character. How about some key gameplay features? Let's go through those here in just a second. First off, the character classes. And now you have Warrior, Valkyrie, Wizard, and Archer. Each have unique strengths and abilities. There is a leveling system. Characters can gain experience and improve attributes such as strength, speed, armor, and magic. There's power-ups and items. There's a wide variety of consumables, legendary weapons, and magical effects. Non-linear progression. Players can tackle the realms here in any order that you want, with the hub world connecting various stages. And there was a password and save system. Players can save your progress and your character stats, which was a rarity for arcade games at the time. If you're familiar, it was very much that NBA Jam, enter in your initials and then enter in a number, almost like a pen. So yeah, I mean, you could literally save your game as long as you remembered those initials. You could come back and pick right up from where you were. That said something for a game that took your quarters as easily as this game did. Gameplay loop is straightforward but addictive. You defeat waves of enemies and you destroy monster generators, collect keys and treasures, and you progress through increasingly challenging realms. So, Gauntlet Legends is, as I mentioned, a direct sequel to the original Gauntlet from 1985 and Gauntlet 2 in 1986, both of which were seminal in establishing multiplayer dungeon crawler genre. Legends marked the series' transition to 3D, as I mentioned, and introduced those RPG style progression mechanics. This game was then followed by Gauntlet Dark Legacy in 2001, which expanded on Legends' new characters, levels, and features. Later entries included Gauntlet 7 Sorrows in 2007, and in 2014 there was a reboot, but Legends and Dark Legacy are widely regarded as the high points for the franchise. Now, the development of Gauntlet Legends was ambitious. They aimed to modernize a beloved franchise while retaining its core appeal. But the team at Atari Games faced significant technical challenges, particularly in adapting the game's code for different platforms. According to the game's producer Howard Lair, the PlayStation and the Nintendo 64 versions were built from the ground up, with unique engines and art assets tailored to each system's capabilities. Now, one of the most innovative features was that password save system, particularly in the arcade. That allowed players to save their progress and return to their characters over multiple sessions. Again, a total rarity in arcade games, and it contributed to the game's longevity and its replayability. The game's design emphasized co-op play and accessibility. It had very simple controls and a focus on action over complexity. The development team also included numerous secrets, unlockable characters, and Easter eggs, because this game rewards exploration and experimentation. Friends, I'm going to give you one right now, just a little hint. As we're just starting to go into this game, shoot every wall. Shoot every wall. If you shoot a wall and it blinks, keep shooting it, it'll disappear. There's a little tip from me to you. Now, the soundtrack, as I mentioned, was composed by John Paul and Barry Leitch, and it blends orchestral and electronic elements, with each realm featuring distinct musical themes. The use of real instrument samples and advanced sound design tools were also notable for this era. If this machine was in your arcade, you knew it, just by the sound alone. Now, let's not wait any longer. Let's dive into the tips, tricks, secrets, and Easter eggs, because this game is renowned for its abundance of all of those. First, unlockable characters. If you reach level 25 with a character, you can hold down turbo while selecting them, and the players can then unlock alternate forms. The warrior turns into a minotaur. The Valkyrie turns into a falconess. The wizard into a jackal, and the archer into a tigress. But that's not all. Additional secret characters such as Pojo the chicken and Sumner, Sumner, Sumner the wizard, can be unlocked by completing specific bonus stages and collecting a certain amount of coins. Also, the character Death is in this game, and in the game he hides typically under things. He'll hide in chests or he'll hide in breakable walls, and when he appears, he's going to kill you. He starts sapping your health immediately. But if you beat the game, It grants a permanent anti-death power-up and allows players to steal health from him for a change. And that was a welcomed thing. But remember, you had to beat the game first. That's no easy task. Now, weapon power-ups, there's legendary weapons such as the Ice Axe of Untar and the Scimitar of Rasha. They can be found in specific levels, and they make boss fights a breeze. I love that scimitar so much. And the boss is nothing. It's 3 hits and you're done once you find it. You will die multiple times if you do not have that scimitar, so work to find it. Now there's infinite gold and stat boosts. If you name your character 10,000K, that's 10000K, and you do that on the N64, it grants you 10,000 gold each time you return to the tower. That, of course, would enable rapid stat upgrades. There's also a no enemies unlimited shrink glitch. You can exploit a time freeze or shrink potions that can result in levels with no enemies or permanently shrunken foes, making them as easy as walking over them to kill them. That makes the game much, much easier. You can also turn death into food. If you use a potion near a container that's hiding death, so once you play the game and you realize, okay, if I go to this container, it always holds death. If I use a potion outside of it, it will transform him into a fruit that provides a health boost instead of death being there. There's also a programmer room. In the Valkyrie bonus level, there's a hidden trap door that leads to a room that will show you the pictures of every development team member. And yes, the nude Valkyrie Easter egg does exist. How do you find it? Enter the initials NUD and, of course, the pin 069. And that unlocks a censored nude version of the Valkyrie, complete with black bars. Strategic tips include using your turbo attacks liberally because they recharge over time. You should exploit bottlenecks for easy experience. What do I mean by that? Well, don't just run up into a room with a bunch of monsters in it. There's always a walkway that appears before you get there. So go to the monsters, make them chase you back down the walkway, and kill them one at a time. That is the best way. It's called bottlenecking. It's the best way to take out a whole place full of monsters. And that gets you a lot of easy experience, by the way. And leverage character strengths. Melee for the warrior, Valkyrie, and ranged for the wizard and the archer. All right, what was the critical reception for this game? Well, Gauntlet Legends received generally overly positive reviews, particularly in the multiplayer gameplay and faithful modernization of the Gauntlet Classic. For instance, the Dreamcast version got a 74%, Nintendo 64 71, PlayStation 60. IGN gave the Dreamcast version 8.4 out of 10. Nintendo 64, IGN gave 7.7 out of 10. And IGN gave PlayStation 7.2 out of 10. The game was highly played in the arcades, sold hundreds of thousands of units, and was constantly, at least in my arcade, played with as many players as were on. There were 2-player versions and 4-player versions of the cabinet, and I don't remember a time walking up when there wasn't somebody on it. Gauntlet Legends was indeed a commercial success, particularly in arcades, and again on the Nintendo 64 and the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast version of this game is beautiful, by the way, and it plays very, very well. The game did rank among the top-selling Dreamcast titles during the Dreamcast's release window, and it was nominated for several industry awards, including Console Action Game of the Year and Best Console Multiplayer Game of the Year. So what makes it cool and fun to play? Well, it excels in delivering this fast-paced cooperative action. The sheer number of enemies on the screen at one time and the constant barrage of power-ups and the satisfaction of leveling up and customizing characters creates compelling gameplay loop. Games multiplayer focus fosters camaraderie and friendly competition. You don't want to be the player that constantly eats the fruit when you look up and see your other player is almost dead. Don't be that don't be that guy. Right? Don't be anywhere near that guy. Also, don't shoot the magic because it blows up. Don't be that guy either. There's a variety of realms, a variety of bosses, and hundreds of secrets, and it ensures each gameplay and playthrough offers new discoveries. And your ability to save your progress and return to characters over multiple sessions was groundbreaking, not for only the arcade game, but for the game's longevity overall. So, I can remember once being in the arcade, my friends and I had just discovered their after playing Gauntlet Legends a few times, and its attract mode was so beckoning, as you've seen it here on the screen multiple times. So what we did was we began to pool our allowance, and we would select a different hero: the warrior, the Valkyrie, wizard, and the archer, and we would plunge directly into the chaos. Well, hours would pass, and the blur of monsters, treasure, and frantic shouts of "Valkyrie needs food badly." But it was in the Mountain Kingdom, after defeating a particularly stubborn dragon, that we stumbled upon a mysterious trapdoor. Our curiosity was piqued, so we stepped inside and we found ourselves in a bonus stage, a psychedelic chamber filled with spinning coins and the most surreal visuals you've ever seen. The challenge was clear: collect 50 coins before the small amount of time ran out. Our coordination was tested, and we darted and dodged, and we were laughing in the arcade so loud. When that timer expired, a message flashed on the screen: "Congratulations, the Minotaur is now available." We erupted in cheers and high fives as we realized we'd unlocked the secret character finally, and again we could save our game. That discovery transformed our experience from then on. Suddenly, every level held the promise of hidden doors and new heroes, and we returned week after week, determined to uncover every secret and master every realm. Well, we didn't do that, of course, because the game just cost too much back then. That same friend group has played it and unlocked everything on the console versions. Absolutely love this game to death, and there's not much more to say. Have you played this game? Have you played Gauntlet Legends? I know Gauntlet Dark Legacy also seems to be more of a favorite because it has everything here plus some in it. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments of Gauntlet Legends, and if you found anything, any cool secrets or things. Because I just barely hit the tip of the iceberg here this evening on what's available in this game, and I would love to hear if you've seen any unlockables, or what your favorite character is, or do you have a story like I shared here? So, concluding up on the games, Rampage World Tour and Gauntlet Legends stand as testaments to the enduring power of arcade design. Games that prioritize fun and accessibility and even social interaction. Hey man, would you please stop eating all the food? I'm about to die. I can't tell you how many times I had to say that. More so to newbies than friends, but friends would do it to you too. These games' legacies are built not just on the innovative mechanics of being 3D or technical prowess, but on the memories that they created and the secrets we discovered, the friendships we forged, and the laughter we shared. Today, both of these games are celebrated as hidden gems, cherished by those who experienced them firsthand, and then rediscovered by a whole new generation of players. I hope you'll take the time to fire up your emulation machine or head down to Galloping Ghost in Brookfield, Illinois, the world's largest arcade, and play it firsthand on original hardware. Say hi to Doc Mac for me. All right, that takes care of the video games for this week's episode. Now, Let me take you on a little trip with younger me. So I've always been a comic book collector, and I've always been a Marvel zombie. Now, don't get me wrong, I could pick up a DC book and enjoy it just as well. Green Lantern, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter. Yes, even Green Arrow. I've read them all, but no character holds my heart, holds my mind, holds my imagination and my creativity like Spider Man. He always has been my number one character. When I first started collecting comics, there wasn't comic book shops. My mom would take me grocery shopping with her, and there was was called a drug store. Hook's drugstore was just to the right of the Marsh's supermarket that we would go to. And if I was quote unquote good and helped and didn't ask for a bunch of stuff and help bag things at the grocery store, mom allowed me to go over to the drugstore where they had a huge candy aisle. And then there were literally clothes baskets, plastic clothes baskets that had comic books thrown in them. Just thrown. Just boom, boom, boom. And I would go and look through there and pick out comics. And back then they were a quarter a piece. Now today they're $5, $6, $7, but back then a quarter. So I picked up titles like The Amazing Spider-Man, The Fantastic Four, Black Panther, just to name a few. The Incredible Hulk, Ghost Rider. Loved every single issue. But friends, there was no continuity because the comic book or the pharmacy just bought whatever. Sometimes they'd buy them, sometimes not. So might get Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man number 23 this week and number 26 the next. The next time you were in because they didn't they didn't get the new ones in weekly. So there was no continuity in the runs, right? It wasn't until much later when I found a comic book shop and started buying them that I could go back into the what were called dollar bins and pick up full runs of these comics. Now, friends, I'm blessed with what's called the Marvel Universe app. And it works on your phone and it works on your Kindle and it works on my Fire, and you can read comics till your heart's content, and you can go all the way back to issue number 1 of everything and read them. Many people say, "Why would you want to?" Well, because it certainly brings back nostalgia for me. I can remember the first Amazing Spider-Man comic that I read and just having my mind blown that all the color and the stories and having to wait to find out what happened to him the next week or whatever. But friends, my comic book reading life changed when I saw the Green Goblin, Spider-Man's most, at that time, heinous villain. One Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin was, and he simply wanted to be a crime lord, but Spider-Man wasn't having any of it and kept stopping him until finally Norman went mad and he grabbed Spider-Man's girlfriend at the time, Gwen Stacy, and went right up to I believe it was the Brooklyn Bridge there. And, he threw her off. And Spider-Man had to try to use his webs at the last minute to grab her, and he did, but it snapped her neck and she died. And that almost drove Spider-Man to take another man's life, but he didn't. And he ended up fighting Norman, and ended up to the death. He didn't kill him. Norman killed himself by using this bat glider thing that he would like fly around on. And Spider-Man was talking to him, and he was He was remotely controlling this bat thing, and it flew in and it stabbed him right in the chest. If you've seen Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, you've seen that scene. And that was the end of the Green Goblin until years later his son would become Harry Osborn would become the Green Goblin again, but not nearly as good as Norman. But friends, in between there, something happened. What happened was the creation of one ominous, terrifying hobgoblin. Yeah, hobgoblin. So, Hobgoblin first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man, number 238. That's crazy, isn't it? 238. It was created by Roger Stern and John Romita Jr. There he is, the Hobgoblin. This issue introduced the mysterious new villain who would become Spider-Man's most iconic foe. But here's why. No one hardly knew who this character was. Multiple people have worn the Hobgoblin mantle. It's one of the reasons the character became a legendary mystery. According to Marvel sources themselves, the original Hobgoblin was none other than Roderick Kingsley, the original true Hobgoblin. He was a fashion mogul and a business person smarter than none other. But he had a little problem with love of money, and he wanted to also rule the underworld. Then we had Ned Leeds. Ned Leeds was a friend of Peter Parker, and this man was framed and he was manipulated into being the Hobgoblin. Then we had Jason Macendale Jr. Now, that name might be familiar to some of you because he was the former Jack-o'-lantern. This man had a Jack-o'-lantern pumpkin head, and he rode a pogo board that he bounced around on. And he was kind of a joke, and everybody made fun of him, including Spider-Man. And he finally had enough of it, and during one of the times when the Hobgoblin was dead, he basically was given the outfit and the weapons and said, "You do it for a while." So he did it, but then he later became something called the Demo Goblin, which we'll go into a little later. Then there was Robin Bourne, briefly associated with the identity. So briefly, we'll hardly ever mention it. And yes, Harry Osborn is listed as an alternate identity in some continuity references. He's played the Hobgoblin before. And then Phil Urich. He's the nephew of Ben Urich, who has worked at the Daily Bugle with Peter Parker, and he actually tried to become a heroic Green Goblin. That didn't work, so then he became a new corrupted Hobgoblin. Didn't ever like that one. Let's get into Roderick Kingsley's origin story. Roderick was a corrupt fashion designer and a businessman who built his empire through crime. One of his associates discovered a hidden green goblin lair, and he told Roderick about it. Roderick told him, "Well, go find all the stuff and bring it to me." So the guy fills up a van, all the stuff that he could find in there, including Norman Osborn's journals, and he delivered it all to Roderick. And as he was driving away in the van, Roderick pushed a button and the van exploded. He murdered the man so he could keep the secret of who the Hobgoblin was. Now, at that point, we didn't know who Roderick Kingsley was. They always kept his face dark. You never saw this man's face. Well, Kingsley then studied Norman Osborn's journals and his equipment, and he became obsessed with the idea of becoming a costumed criminal. But it wouldn't suffice him to simply be another Green Goblin. Oh no. He modified the Goblin formula to reduce its sanity-inducing effects. You see, Norman was driven insane by that very formula that made him strong. Roderick found a way around that. That's Roderick Kingsley right there, if you're watching. And it created a more stable and more dangerous version of the Goblin persona. Then the thing that truly makes this character ominous is the look of the Hobgoblin. Instead of the purple and green, almost Joker-like look of Green Goblin, Kingsley created a more sickly flesh color with red eyes and an orange-themed cloak and kind of blue, like arm coloring and leg colorings. Kingsley also created a more deadly version of all the original Green Goblin's weapons, such as the pumpkin bombs, the razor bats, and of course, his finger shocks and lasers. Kingsley was everything Norman Osborn wishes he could ever have been. Smart, shrewd, cunning, fearless, and twice as strong, thanks to the enhanced Goblin formula he created from Norman's original notes. You see, Hobgoblin would go on to be one of Spider-Man's most formidable foes, and one that even Spider-Man himself admitted fearing. Marvel used this character in a very amazing way for the longest of times, as I mentioned. No one knew who he was. For years, you never knew who he was. Now, we were tempted a few times with reveals where Spider-Man would get the best of him and pull the mask off. But every time he pulled the mask off, it turned out to be false. And it was totally set up by the original Hobgoblin, Roderick Kingsley. Shockingly, Hobgoblin has never been used in any Spider-Man movie. But he has made many appearances, even Lego, as you can see there. But he made many appearances in Spider-Man cartoons. Here's hoping that one day we'll get to see him in all his glory up on the big screen. And who knows who Spider-Man will be at that time. All right, let me give you the full kind of story history. So from 1983 to 87, it was called the Mystery Era. You see, Hobgoblin debuted, he terrorized New York City, and he became a major new villain first. His identity was one of Marvel's longest-running mysteries. Ned Leeds, as I mentioned, was framed as the Hobgoblin and was later even killed dressed as the Hobgoblin. And eventually it was revealed that Roderick Kingsley was the true mastermind, as you saw in the picture that I'm showing on screen. In the late 1980s and 1990s, we had the Jason Macendale era. Jason Macendale, who was the Jack-o'-lantern, took over the identity after Ned Leeds died. He literally was there when Leeds died, so he picked up all the stuff from the Hobgoblin and just took it for himself. He became increasingly unstable, though, and desperate for power, because the one thing he lacked was that Goblin formula. So, during a storyline called Inferno, he bargained with a demon called Naastir, and he became the demonic Hobgoblin at that time. And then in 1992, we had the birth of the Demo Goblin. Not Demo Hobgoblin, but Demo Goblin. Doctor Strange actually separated the demon that was in Jason Macendale, and that created two entities. One was the Demo Goblin. He was a standalone villain, and Macendale went back to being the plain old Jack-o'-lantern. The Demo Goblin became a violent, totally obsessed monster who appeared heavily in what was called Maximum Carnage, which was a story about an evil version of Venom. But wait, you say, wasn't Venom evil? No. Venom actually became a good guy for a long, long time. And because he became a good guy, they needed another bad version of him, so Carnage was created. And hence we had the Maximum Carnage storyline. Now, from the 2000s on, Roderick Kingsley has returned, thank goodness, as the true Hobgoblin. Phil Urich became a new Hobgoblin before falling from grace. And Kingsley later now actually franchises out the Hobgoblin identity to criminals for profit. So going forward, you never know who's going to be in the Hobgoblin getup. So let's see. Has Hobgoblin ever died? Well, kinda. Several versions of him have died. As we mentioned, Ned Leeds died as the Hobgoblin, but he never really was Hobgoblin. Jason Macendale was killed by the original Hobgoblin. And Demogoblin died after sacrificing himself, believe it or not, to save a child. He turned good in the end. Kingsley, however, still lives to this day, and as a matter of fact, was in last week's version of The Amazing Spider-Man. But get this. In last week's version of The Amazing Spider-Man, Peter Parker is in space as Spider-Man. So Norman Osborn is running around as Spider-Man, and Ben Reilly, a clone of Peter Parker, is running around as Peter Parker. Yes, it is all screwed up and hardly worth reading, but I still do. Why is Hobgoblin the perfect Spider-Man villain? Well, he's the refined version of the Green Goblin. He used Osborn's tech, but he's more calculating and he's not insane. He's a master manipulator. He frames others, he uses decoys, and he hides behind layers and layers of schemes. He's a businessman first and a villain second, and that matters. Kingsley treats crime like a corporation, and it's a perfect foil for Peter's working class life. But most of all, he's unpredictable. Multiple identities kept readers and Spider-Man guessing for decades. So, how many issues would you say Hobgoblin has appeared in? Well, the index count for Roderick Kingsley alone is 3 major indexed appearances in the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. But this is not a full count of all comic issues, only the indexed handbook entries. Because Hobgoblin appears across the Amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, the regular just Spider-Man, and even events like Inferno, Maximum Carnage, and something called Axis. But the total is well over 100 issues, which I can finally say with a smile on my face, I own all 100 that he's in. Finally. Yes, even including last week's. We talked about his appearance in movies, cartoons. He's definitely been in the cartoons. He was in the Spider-Man animated series in 1994 as a major reoccurring villain. He was in the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon in 2008, but he was an alternate version of himself. And in Ultimate Spider-Man in 2012. So, my friends, Hobgoblin has and always will be one of the coolest characters you're ever going to read. You know, I can remember flipping through one of my dusty long boxes once. And he was going through, and I happened to find my Amazing Spider-Man 244. But tucked inside of that comic, as I was flipping through it, was a piece of notebook paper. And on it, I guess I had written, Ned isn't the real one. No explanation, no anything else. I just wrote, Ned isn't the real one. Just a warning about the mystery that was about to unfold in that book over years. And for a second, I felt like I was back in the middle of the Hobgoblin saga, chasing clues and second-guessing suspects and talking to my friends about who do you think it could be? Who could it be, right? And wondering who was pulling the strings. That's the magic of the Hobgoblin. We all know who the Joker is. Another great villain, by the way, if not perfect villain for Batman. Superman has no such villain. Oh, you'll always have Lex, but Lex is Lex, and you always know who Lex is. But who's the Hobgoblin? And it take you years and years to be able to find that out. And even then, he's still pulling the strings from 84 to 2026. That, my friends, is a legacy unlike any other. All right. Well, that ends this episode of Hey, have I told you about this? So now I've told you about two amazing video games in the Hobgoblin. You got to hear about Gauntlet Legends, one of the all-time probably favorite games that I can play in an arcade. Gauntlet Legends brings back so many memories for me that I just can't I can't even recall them all. I mean, so many times playing with friends um, in multiplayer and getting down to watching my health down from 100, 99, 98, 97, and I'm like, hey guys, next food I need coming out of the chest, please let me have it. And then watching my friend take it and then reaching over and just punching him in the arm like, you heard what I said. And then of course the next time I'm going to eat every food he comes near so that he has to die. There's stories that go on and on and on. And then Rampage, World Tour is such a great game. There's so many secrets there to find, and you never know when you're going to find them because they just appear randomly. You can play that game forever. So please, guys, do me a favor. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know, what do you think about Rampage World Tour? What do you think about Gauntlet Legends? And now that you've had the TED Talk on Hobgoblin and Spider-Man, are you tempted to go back and look up these issues? If you want to read one of the most amazing mysteries for a villain that has stood the test of time and is still on top of the villain hill today, seek out Hobgoblin. Take a Saturday afternoon and go to a local comic book shop. Ask the owner, where are your, back issue bins or your dollar bins or your quarter boxes? Ask him, do you have anything with Hobgoblin in it? Oh, he'll have it. If not action figures, because there's action figures. I have a wonderful bust of the Hobgoblin that was made that it's my favorite bust of all of my Marvel busts that I have. I hope you'll find and enjoy a new character in the Hobgoblin as much as I do. All right, friends, that's it for this week. That's where my mind took me this week. Where will it take me next week? Who knows, but Survivor's coming. And my mind's always not far from Survivor. And also, I hope you took the time to watch my episode on those Transformer blocky models that I'm building, because I'm going to have a few more of those coming up in the future, and I hope you can be a part of those. So, with that said, once again, if you could do me a small favor, if you like this content at all, if it's been even remotely enjoyable to you, would you please consider just hitting the like, hitting the subscribe button? Nothing here is monetized, never will be. It's not what this is about. What this is about is hopefully getting more than 20 people to be able to see the video. A lot of the YouTubers that I watch very consistently today, they're all saying the same thing. Even when people like and subscribe, they're not getting notifications of my videos. Well, friends, there's one thing you can count on with good old Brad here. You're always going to have a video every week. They're going to come out. I've done them after having vertigo. I've done them after having surgery because I love doing this. It's a passion of mine. And my mind, it never stops. So I'm always going to have content for you. And with great things like Survivor 50 coming up and so many great movies, Avengers Doomsday coming up, Spider-Man Brand New Day, so many other great movies coming out this year, television shows coming. I want to share all that with you because my mind is a terrible thing to waste, and I love to share it with you. So if you would just take a moment, hit that like and subscribe so we can get more people here. We can build this community and have wonderful conversations together about the things that we all like. All right. With that said, thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you. I hope you have an amazing week this week. And please go wherever your mind takes you. Have a great week.